Why are there so many podcasts about Tottenham? Do I want to know why? They might contain insight, but mostly delusions. If I hear one more, I might die. They don't like Levy and they don't like Enoch. They pine for Moo and Conte.
Hello and welcome to Poddenham Hotspur, the Tottenham Hotspur podcast about Tottenham Hotspur podcasts. Today I'm joined by one of the hosts of Grumpy Old Spurs, David Harris. Hi David, how are you?
I'm very well indeed. How are you? I'm sitting here. It's a sunny Sydney morning. You're in the state of Washington, and we're talking about our beloved club in North London.
Yeah, it's 8:30 p.m. my time. It's cold. It's not very nice. I'm actually just outside of DC in Maryland, so Washington is the other side of the country.
Yeah,
It's a confusingly named country at times. And you're 11:30 in the morning?
it's 11:30 in the morning. It's going to be about 28 degrees here. It's marvelous.
So any f ups throughout this recording we can attribute to proximity to coffee, right? Like,
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah,
I've already
yeah,
had my coffee about 6:30 this morning. Absolutely.
yeah. So do you want to talk to us about your Spurs story for anybody who hasn't listened to you on the Spurs show or the Cheese Room or Grumpy Old Spurs or whatever else in the last decade plus of Spurs podcasting? What are you all
Sure.
about?
So as you can tell by the accent, I might have an Aussie twang from time to time because I naturally speak in a monotonal voice, which is not good for podcasts or YouTube. So one has to watch one's emphasis when talking. So look, my story is I originally hail from North London. My grandpa, the family on my late father's side were in the East End of London. And for some reason, we don't know why, he started going to Tottenham in 1938 and he didn't choose West Ham. So we had a very lucky escape from being a hammer. So he went in 1938. He had three boys, one of which obviously my dad. And we've been going to Tottenham since 1938. My first game was in the old second division, where we beat Bristol Rovers 9-0. Colin Lee got 4. And Colin Lee was my first Tottenham hero, which I got slated on Twitter about. I was about 6. I've been slated for Colin Lee being my hero in 1977-78 when I was 6 years old, and I'm being slated for something in my 50s. And so in terms of going to Tottenham, been going for years now. I've been first came to Australia in '99. I was back in London for a stint for a couple of years, beginning in the noughties. But whenever I go over, I try and get to a game. And we'll probably get into it, but I am a real expat Tottenham fan. Had a stint in Hong Kong as well.
Tell me about Colin Lee. I can't say that's a name I'm terribly familiar with.
I'm amazed that you're not familiar with the name Colin Lee because he's one of the great strikers. So that the day we beat them 9-0, Colin Lee got 4 goals on his debut. Ian Moore's got a hat trick, and Lord Hoddle got 1, and Peter Taylor got 1. Now, I only found out about this due to the Great Spurs show. A couple of years ago, they had a guest on, and it was revealed that Keith Birkinshaw was not in charge that day. He had a family bereavement, and Bill Nick took charge. So I have, at my first game, Bill Nick was in charge of Tottenham. So I have seen Bill Nick manage Tottenham, which I think is pretty cool.
You're just checking off all of the Tottenham Hotspur supporter, checklist, right? You've got multi-generation family supporting Spurs.
Tick.
You've got, been there from the second division, so therefore, even when you're not a glory hunter, you've
Tick.
seen 2 legendary managers, kind
Tick.
of.
Yeah, tick.
Yeah, exactly. So you're doing
Yeah,
well.
I don't
podcaster.
think anyone can accuse me of being a bandwagon jumper. I mean, I've seen some awfulness over the years, that's for sure.
Can you accuse any Spurs fan of being a bandwagon jumper? I guess maybe the Pochettino era, you could say there's some new fans who have never known it so good. And that's maybe where we are, right?
Well, that's a very good point you've made there, Iain, because at the end of the day, you've got the Poch era fans who may or may not be responsible for booing at half time at the stadium when there's no reason to boo anything. and there might be a little sense of entitlement there. But I've gone all the way back from the second division and I've seen the highs and the lows. So yeah, it's interesting. I think certain generations of fans are a little bit more entitled than others. It depends what your entry point is.
I think you can levy it at pretty much any single fan base. But as you remember reading A People's History of Tottenham Hotspur, great book if anybody hasn't read it, and in there they talk about, entitlement's such a strong word, but something in that ballpark with Spurs fans in the 80s, I want to say they were talking about. I can't remember what the decade was, but there was a stereotype of match going Spurs fans and being pretty demanding of the players. So maybe
Yeah,
it's just ebbs and flows.
Well, my entitlement came from the fact that in the beginning of the 80s, from 81 to 82, I was very lucky as a 9-year-old, 10-year-old to go to Wembley Stadium 7 times in 14 months to see Charity Shields, FA Cups, replays, League Cups. Now that, if that sets up the entitlement for the rest of the 80s, yeah, I'll take that one.
See, that's why I'm so easygoing. I'm a child of '86, so I barely remember the FA Cup, and then League Cup came around, and I'm like, this is the best thing ever, and it's a tin pot trophy that's held together with blue tack and wrapped up with tinfoil. So last season was the best I've ever eaten as a Spurs fan.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, the Europa Cup final. I was hugging my son at 7 o'clock in the morning in tears, and obviously this is an audio pod, but Ian, you can see that I'm living in an apartment. I got a message on the apartment group chat at 6:30 a.m. saying, "Can you please be quiet and stop shouting?" And I explained. So I sent a message back going, "We've just won our first trophy in 17 years. Sorry about that."
Good for you. We'll talk about last season a little bit later once we've I think it'd be because we're both kind of new pods in a way. Like Grumpy Old Spurs started last season. Is that right?
Yeah, So basically, the origin is, if you want the origin story, is that you had the Cheese Room podcast, which is still going, in the Cheese Room YouTube.
Great podcast.
And so with the Cheese Room YouTube, that was kind of really driven from about 2021 with the Caller and the Harlow Globetrotter, right? And they did the Euros 2020, which was a year late, if I remember, because of COVID. So they were like the Saint and Greavesy, sorry for 80s reference, of that whole tournament, and they were on pretty much every day. And then I kind of joined in with those guys. I'd done some Cheese Room pods. I'd been on the Spurs show first time in 2014, and so basically the Cheese Room YouTube got some pretty good momentum going. We got up to about 7,000, 8,000 subscribers in a few years. And we were doing about 2 to 3 shows a week. I mean, we even did deadline day specials. We did a 7-hour deadline day specials where we had rotating guests in, we had quizzes. I think we may have played live Connect 4 at some point. God knows. And basically we got it to a point where we're about doing 2 to 3 shows a week. Then there was a kind of a split where the Cheese Room pod kept the name and the brand, and then the YouTube channel, I think it was the beginning of last season, it was called Lads It's Tottenham. And so from there, what happened with that is that, I wasn't doing much at that time on the YouTube, and then myself and Gibbo did an instant reaction show to one of the North London derbies that we lost. And actually, Gibbo and I just moaned. It was very grumpy about the whole thing for 45 minutes. And apparently, and God knows why, some people found that entertaining. And so they said, you should keep doing that. And so from there, with my random tangential mind kicked in, I said, well, let's call ourselves Grumpy Old Spurs. Using Canva and chat and all that, let's see if we can get Stadler and Waldorf, 7, hang on, got to be careful these days, you can't use that word, Snow White and the 7 vertically challenged people with a particular character called Grumpy, stick them in Spurs kits, use that as our branding, and off we go. And so that's how it was born, that we are Grumpy, we're old, and we're Spurs, and that's how it became thus. So we've been going we're doing it now probably since about February-ish last season.
Yeah, it's been a fun. It looks like a fun ride you've had. It last season was a weird season to be grumpy about. right? Because there was plenty of opportunities to be grumpy.
Yeah.
And then at the end, you
Yeah.
got the least grumpy thing ever.
Well, no, I mean that's the thing, right? Like, because okay, we're grumpy, and as my family and friends would tell you, Ian, being grumpy comes very naturally to me, and has been from a young age. And we are a family of grumpy Tottenham supporters on the different scales of the whole thing, right? So last season was like so. For example, when we got into the final, I think we did an instant reaction straight after Bodo Glimt, and then I'm like, basically, I'd put Spurs are on their way to Wembley, Chaz and Dave, on the old soundbar, and if you copyright limits, I'm singing Spurs are on their way to Bilbao for 10 seconds, and I'm dancing around with my Spurs shirt on. I don't think anyone saw my check pajama trousers. No one wants to see that. And so the instant reaction is joy, and that kind of thing. So when there's obviously joyful things to happen, there's nothing to be grumpy about. We still got plenty to talk about, and that's a good thing.
It's funny because your current show is Grumpy Old Spurs, but when I was looking through the Cheese Room archives, I did find that you were on the Zagreb 3-0 loss pod. Back in 2021. You were present on that, and I would say that you were not that grumpy. Surprisingly, there was definitely grumpier people on that pod than you.
I always call that One Night in Zagreb. So there's an old Lloyd Webber song from some music called One Night in Bangkok. I call it One Night in Zagreb, where we managed to be the only team ever to lose to a team who, between the first leg and the second leg, their first team coach is in prison. That's proper Tottenham, that is. And it's funny you should say that, because that conversation that night descended into an age-old conversation that I had about our beloved owners. And obviously, we've got new owners now, the Lewis family. It's a new era for the club.
Well, they're rebranded.
Are you saying they're the same people? Is that what you're telling me, Ian? No.
If you look behind the curtain, the Wizard of Oz may not be what you expected.
Well, I am a mate. I thought it's a brand new era. It's the children. It's the Lewis family. It's the next gen.
It's those 18-year-old Lewis kids.
It's the Von Trapp family, the Lewises.
Yeah.
Blimey, you listened to that. That was a shocking one, that was.
Well, on the flip side of it, you also were on the Spurs show this year for the post-Bodo Glimt win, the first leg. So,
yeah.
Ups and downs,
that's what it's all about. I mean, because, look, I think the fun that we have with all of this, right, is that, so Gibber and I, we're not, you're not going to get an XG analysis, all right? You are not going to get, during the transfer window, that we're going to talk about some Bulgarian left back who plays second division and is a part-time goat herder. We don't do any of that, right? We are who we are. I'd like to poshly call it we're trying to do satire here, but in other words, we're just taking the piss, really, is what we're doing. And I think that there's a lot of fun to be had with all of this and looking at things in life, right? So for example, recently with Daniel Levy's recent demise, I put together a multiple choice quiz on the reign of Daniel Levy, and one of them was based around the Hugo Lloris autobiography. So I put on a crap hello French accent. Only one person may have found it funny, me. But that's kind of what we do, because you look at other YouTube shows in days gone by, you might have 10 people talking about Levy and Enoch for 3 hours. That's what they want to do, and they probably get much better numbers than us. Fair play to them. But even me, who's been kind of against Levy since AVB appointment, it's not fun to watch for me from a personal point of view. So, multiple choice quizzes on Daniel Levy's era. We did this thing called Dog of the Week. So I don't know if you remember, Donna Cullen had bring a dog to work day. And then,
I had a bone to pick with you over this. I've unintended.
Yeah.
I think it was a bit of fun. I think that you were a little bit anti Dog of the Week. Donna Cullen's, what was it called? Tottenham Hotspur, right? That's a good pun. That's a good pun.
I didn't get that one. That is a good pun. I know that. Okay. Apologies to Donna. As she walks away with her big check. But anyway,
yeah, she's a frequent listener. She's always writing into me.
Apparently, she does like to tune. So she did used to look at various socials, allegedly. Anyway, but with that, Dog of the Week was, so in the match day program, you had that picture of someone's dog dressed in Spurs gear and a description. So I just said to Gibbo, And I was just taking a mickey and go, look, there's a big debate going on, big uproar and debate in the YouTube pod community. We're not afraid to tackle the big issues. And here's Dog of the Week. And so we looked at Dog of the Week. And then the follow-up was Tree of the Week. We did that where the tree there's a 500-year-old oak tree got felled on the property next to the training ground by Toby Carvery, who happened to be owned by the Tavistock Group, who you may have heard of, who are involved with the old owners, Enoch, but nothing to do with the Lewis family. So the satire that week, I said that we did the same stick where big debate going on. It's Tree of the Week, Gibbo. This is a 500-year-old oak. It's just been felled. And we've signed up to the Race to Zero, the UN Race to Zero. So we've signed up the UN Race to Zero, but we've got that partnership with Ineos and other fuel chugging things. So I call it satire, or it's taking the piss. So that's kind of what our shtick is.
I think you've hit upon two really important qualities of your show there. The first one is length. If you're going to have as a mission statement being grumpy, you can't stick around for 3 hours. No one wants to listen to somebody being grumpy for 3 hours.
No.
You know. Well,
no, I agree.
That's what my wife keeps telling me anyway. And the number two is being self-aware and not taking it too seriously. I think that maybe that's three qualities. One of my main qualities isn't counting apparently, but I think those elements help keep it grounded from just becoming a moan fest, because acknowledging grumpiness and acknowledging there are things that piss you off, or there's plenty of podcasts that do that. I could name some names, but I don't want to throw anybody under the bus. But like this, a cynical listener to this podcast right now might say, "Well, what's the difference between Grumpy Old Spurs and the Spurs Show on its worst day?"
I totally agree. And I love I absolutely love the Spurs Show, and I call the Spurs Show the Vito Corleone of the podcast YouTube. I mean, it's now into its 19th season, right? And hats off to Mike Lee and Theo, right? And they do, but they are a podcast that's for my demographic, right? That I can't imagine too many people watch Harry Scarf and listen to the Spurs Show. I can't imagine too many people watch us and watch Harry Scarf. And it's no disrespect to Harry. I mean, he's great. I've been on his show a couple of times, but it's totally different. I mean, I've been on Holly's Hotspurs a couple of times, and very kindly, like Holly, like sometimes appears in the chat, like, after evening, how you doing? It's a bit like she's checking on the two elderly relatives and making sure they're okay. It's like a health check, and then off she goes for her evening. But I think for us, I mean, at the moment we've got this thing called Reasons to Be Cheerful, which is like, it's an old Ian Dury and the Blockheads show song. So I'll just whack that up and go, right, at the end, what have we got reasons to be cheerful? And at the moment, there's plenty to be cheerful about. So it's a mixture.
I think that although you're saying that people of a younger demographic aren't listening to Spurs Show or your show or whatever, I think they should, because an important thing that we're seeing at the moment, at least in the ground, is the sort of Save Our Seniors, movement, and the God, I almost slipped into business talk. I was going to call it institutional knowledge, but like the things that are important to us, our values, what drives us, what motivates us, why we have the game is about glory plastered everywhere. Without connecting those two generations, you're going to lose that continuity. And of course, they should be entitled to develop their own values and mutate off of what's come before. But if you just turn around and say, they're a bunch of boomers, who gives a shit? It's not. I don't think it does anybody a state. And conversely, not listening to the younger generations and what's important to them and how they're expressing their passion for Spurs. So I would say that some of these kids should give some of the old timers a listen, and vice versa.
Well, it's funny you say that, because like going in the 70s and the 80s, so I used to go with a family called the Campbells, no relation to be clear, who lived across the road from us, and we grew up with them. And
to Fraser Campbell, right?
Yeah, to Fraser. My dad was in the front, and the Campbell's dad was in the front, and we used to take the mickey out of them, going, "Oh, is Len Dukenham playing today? What do you reckon?" And all this, that, and the other. And I've always had I've got a keen interest in history, so knowing the history of the club and the triv around that is a passion, man, and music's another one of my things as well. I mean, I love music. You know, I'm into the Stones. Was I around for the Stones' heyday? I mean, I'm old, but I'm not that old. And it's that connectivity and link, and I think you do get it with the next few generations. Definitely, they're interested in the history and want to know. But one of the things that I think is really important is there's no museum, right? And I think that
Yeah, and they're working on that, right? I think that if that was in the latest, God, what do they call it? The fan
Fab.
advisory board. Yeah, that came up again. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about that for years now, decades. It should be coming. It should be. I mean, how long did it take them to put the gates back up?
Well, the gates was an interesting one because in the Fabs minutes before this one, they said the Bill Nick gates will be put in 18 months' time in a temporary position. Yeah. And that's like, wow. And I sensed the influence of Vinay coming in here, speeding it up and putting it to where it is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other great quote, if I let me get this right, from the last but one Fab minutes, is the same meeting was, the museum remains a priority, but we're not doing anything about it. And that's genius, that is. And I would always argue that, now I'm no genius here, and you'll know more than me. But if you've got an area where there's a go-kart track and go-karts going round and round, would that not be a space you could put a museum in? You tell me, Ian. I'm no expert.
Depends on the shape of the go-kart track.
Ah, okay.
Just stick it in the middle. Make it a circle and to put it right in the middle.
Right, well, not have a go-kart chat and put a museum there. Just putting it out there. That's all.
Nah, I don't know. That sounds a little weird.
Does it? Okay.
Yeah, I tell you, every modern stadium needs a go-kart track. It's it's just logical.
It's the chant go-kart chat. You'll never sing that, which is echoing in the away section every time I watch Tottenham on the TV.
I did hear. I was last at the stadium about a year and a half ago for the Forest game.
Yeah,
and there was some guys on the coach with me, and one of the lads was talking about getting excited about going to the go-karts soon. So there is an excitement for some people to do it. F1, whatever they call it.
Yeah. I mean, I did the stadium tour.
F1, F off. Yeah.
Yeah, something like that. I did the stadium tour about a year and a half, 2 years ago. And the club kindly emailed me a week before telling me that it's going to be dressed up like that for the NFL, right? So, you know, as my mother always said to me, it's not about you, David, but I've come halfway around the world with my kids. I've booked in the stadium tour and not some inconsiderable cost. And we're going to go and look at NFL. Well, my kids, they liked it. But I went round there and I just still had that feeling that at the end of the day, it doesn't feel like a home of a football club. It was just my feel, you know?
So as an overseas fan, is
Yeah.
that something you're looking for when you go back home? You know, what do you do to supplant the old feeling of White Hart Lane? Do you get it from pubs? Do you get it on the street somehow? Because the street's completely changed too. It's some of those stores are still there, but the feel is completely different with the numbers of people and everything else. It's I don't know. It just feels different.
Yeah. But whenever I go back to England, it's like putting on a comfy pair of slippers, right? Because you got all your childhood references, and I don't know, someone's talking about Brucey Forsyth or whatever, and you have all those things, right? And who actually was a Tottenham fan, and you have all those. Yeah, he's a North London boy, and to have all these comforting references and things like that. And then the very first time we went to the stadium was Huddersfield at home. The stadium had just been opened, right? So I'm going with my two boys. And I am like a kid. I am like trembling with excitement. We're walking down the same alleyway that goes on to the high road, and then there's a little voice next to me. He goes, "Oh, it's made of glass. Is that it?" And I'm like frothing at the mouth in annoyance at him. Bless, I love him though. And so but you're right. Like, all the rituals and the customs that you do, because we normally go to a greasy spoon beforehand and have something to eat. We travel, and we're all whenever I go, I'm traveling with my brother or friends and things like that, and the same jokes and the same things that we've been doing for years. So you do have those same rituals, and going into the ground. Yeah, I mean, I just think it was in the context of that comment of what I said before. It was just the tour that day, and you're seeing NFL on the pitch and not set up for a football match. Yeah, but when I go into the stadium, I think when it's rocking. And you hear it, you hear it as an expat fan. It's really rocking. But the White Hart Lane was like that. When White Hart Lane rocked, it rocked. And when we stunk the place out, it was grumpy, moaning, bit of booing and silence. And people forget that and over romanticize.
I always remember, I think it was a 1-0 home loss to Newcastle I went to. Because I didn't go that often. I was too busy as a student spending my money on stuff I shouldn't be spending my money on. But I remember me and my older brother, who's
And
also
going
a
to
Spurs fan.
places where you shouldn't have been spending that money, probably.
Yeah, I can say that. My dad doesn't listen to this, so I'm all right.
Well, that's good.
But I remember me and my older brother were there, and it was Tim Krul when his hands grew about 5 times, and he just saved everything that came past him or
Yeah,
came
yeah.
at him. It was
Yeah,
that game, and just you talk about stinking the place out, and the sort of animosity that the crowd can generate. Yeah, that was. But at the same time, I feel like as a fan, if you don't, I want to see us win every time I go to the stadium. But at the same time, it's kind of cool for me to get that sense because I'm not there as every week as a season ticket holder.
No.
I don't want to see us lose, but there's something about an authenticity to it.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. I totally agree. But I'm not a big one for going to see. I used in Hong Kong as well. I used to watch Tottenham a little bit in the Tottenham pub in Wan Chai, Delaney's in Hong Kong, and I've not watched it much often with Aussie Tottenham or anything like that. There's nothing against those organisations, but sometimes I feel like I don't really want to talk to someone who thinks that Jermaine Genius should be starting and not. I mean, I just can't be bothered with it, right?
Yeah, I'm a big OSC supporter. I actually chair our local club, so I'm big
Do
into
you?
it. But I think it's replaced those rituals. You were talking earlier about
Yeah, I
those
agree.
things going away, and it's done that for me. And I've also been able to grow it, so it's and create new rituals for people who never had any association.
That's
with
cool,
Spurs.
and that's really cool.
But on the flip side, yeah, sometimes it is a little bit like you're listening to people who are incredibly wrong. Love them all,
they're incredibly
myself included.
Yeah, they're incredibly wrong, and you just going, if I was with my people, I'd be going,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? But you kind of got to be a little bit on your best behaviour, and you can't go, oh, you're just talking rubbish, mate.
Yeah, but I think you get to that point, especially if you've got a small enough group where you get people arguing about it. But when you don't know them too well, some of the bigger groups, and you're hearing conversations, and you're like, oh, fuck.
It's like it's going around at someone's house you don't really know and looking at their record collection, and you're like, oh, really? You've got that ABBA album. Yeah, ABBA? Nah, don't. Yeah, it's exactly like that.
So touching on being overseas, as we talked about, we're what, 15 hours apart? I forget what the time difference between us right now is.
Yeah.
But you record with Gibbo, who I think's in, is he Bedfordshire?
Worcester. Near
Worcestershire,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Gibbo.
So you're recording weekly or regularly with somebody many hours apart, doing the Spurs show. When you were the Oz correspondent, you would record and send it in. Mike Lee would read it out.
Yes.
Founder 20, yeah. Occasionally Founder 2018, yeah.
Oh, I forgot. Blimey, you have done your research. I forgot all about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm currently furloughed, so I've got a lot of time on my hands.
Okay, fair enough. If you got a lot of time on your hands and you want to spend it listening to me, you need to have a look at yourself, mate.
It's for my audience, And you've also got Connor Levynomics as well, who's all over. He shows up a lot. I think there's a bit of a debate about whether you guys have his image rights or whether Last Word on Spurs have his image rights.
But this is in a serious point about podcasts and things like that. So like my favorite medium has always been radio, right? So radio, I've always loved radio the most. It's intimate. You can listen to it wherever you are, whatever you're doing, whether you're hoovering, ironing, whatever, right? And then you have that relationship with people who host shows and things like that. And I listen to the 606 phone in Robbie Savage and Chris Sutton. So I love the curmudgeons. I love Chris Sutton. I love Oasis, and I'm going to be seeing him in November. And I love Noel Gallagher when he's interviewed because he's a proper curmudgeon and he's very funny. He's very funny, right? So I like listening to curmudgeons, and maybe I am obviously a curmudgeon myself, and so is Gibbo. And so the funny thing is that Gibbo and I have not met each other in real life yet. Now, we could be disappointed when that time does eventually occur. Now, I've met the caller, and the running joke was that he's taller in real life than he is on the screen. I've met Leon. So Leon's on the show from time to time. I've met him. And then, so me and Gibbo, we've got this... When you're doing... And you talked about this in your analysis of podcasts, I think... I hate using the word bands, so I won't. But when you've got that relationship and the connection and things like that,
chemistry.
Thank you very much. Chemistry is the word. I think we've got a good chemistry. Now he's asleep now, and some definitely shallow like this, some kind of breeze might disturb him in the middle of the night. But Gibbo and I think we've got a really good chemistry and the rhythm that we operate in and things like that, right? And it works well. No one's saying one is the star, the co-host, or we're kind of like co-hosts, but we do different bits which plays to our strengths. And then with Connor coming in, so the running joke with Connor is that every week we introduce him as Last Word on Spurs, Connor, Oh So Spurs, Connor, Spurs Kings TV, Connor. Like he's on a different one every time.
He's
We
all
just
over the place.
and we introduce him as he's a special guest from another channel like every week. That's the running joke. And then I think there's this podcast content award thing coming up or something like that. And so the other week we discussed the fact, I said, if a lot of cash exchanged hands and Grumpy Old Spurs was nominated Last Word on Spurs, which table would you sit on, Connor? And he said, well, probably. Gibbo pipes like, it's definitely Last Word on Spurs. And then Gibbo pipes up, and I'd sit as a +1 with Connor on Last Word on Spurs as well at the table. So that's how we do it with the. Our shtick is the familiarity, the chemistry, which is that word I was grasping for, and you get into that operating rhythm of doing podcasts with people. So I did a watch along with HG. We did the we won the Hong Kong Football Festival of Fun trophy in July when we beat Arsenal in Hong Kong. You remember that?
I haven't stopped talking about it since it happened.
Nor me. I've seen Tottenham lose in Hong Kong, but that's another story. So me and HG did a watch along. Now we had a lot of problems with connectivity, as in the streaming, the delays. I was ahead of him. He was in Vienna. I'm in Sydney, and the thing's happening in Hong Kong, and I'm ahead of him. And then we scored, and I did the worst ever reaction of scoring. And it was a great goal. I mean, I said, we've scored. And so we've only done a few watch alongs. So me and HG did that. And I said, well, how are we going to do this, HG? Are we going to do it like Test match special with cricket, where we'll talk a bit about the game as and when it comes up and then just talk about any old nonsense? And that's what we ended up doing. And now I know your Irish Hotspurs and your others who are much more of a professional and smoother outfit. For David Harris of the Northern Hemisphere, I look after the Southern Hemisphere. And they do it, like their reactions and things like that. But we've just, we're not. I don't think we're very good at doing watch-alongs, to be honest.
Yeah, but I think the point is that there's different styles for different people.
Right.
And I'm not entirely. I'm still wrestling with this question after reviewing We Are Tottenham TV's watch along last week. But last week, 2 weeks ago, time is a concept that's lost me apparently. And it's just I'm not sure who's watching. Is it people like the old style? You turn off the TV sound and you turn the radio on. Are they watching it that way? Is it supplanting a stream? Is it because they're watching a dodgy stream and it's in a language they don't speak, and so they've got the watch along? I've never been quite sure. So I do think that having your favorite voice, whether it be the Irish Hotspur, whether it be somebody else, whether it be you guys, and a test match special approach is, I would say, better than trying to pretend that you're an announcer or you're a commentator.
Yeah, I mean, when Ange was appointed, right, and they had a pre-season game in Perth, Western Australia. It was Tottenham versus West Ham, right? Now, I'd literally just moved into this apartment. I had boxes everywhere and things like that. And so the guy started off. They did a watch along. And they were going with it, and they said, "Look, if anyone wants to jump in." So I think I've watched from the half time onwards, and I was talking about the fact I had a beer and I'd got some Grissini sticks and had Thousand Island dressing and dipping Grissini sticks to Thousand Island dressing, and everyone was looking at me like, "Oh, I hate Thousand Island dressing," and so we were just talking about that, and really weirdly, we got 1,000 views of us watching a game, a friendly. I've got boxes everywhere. We're talking Grissini sticks 1,000. Well, what kind of sick 1,000 people would view that as entertainment? Baffles me.
Maybe you should launch an OnlyFans. Maybe that's where this is all going.
What, middle-aged fat? OnlyFans?
Yeah, just feeding yourself and watching
Grissini,
relevant
Thousand
Spurs
Island OnlyFans. That's a great idea. We might do that.
Yeah, you never know. It's always nice to have a backup plan, isn't it? Trying to think how do I spin that into something else now. So you've been on a bunch of different pods.
Yeah.
You made friends with a lot of podcasts.
Not as many as Connor, to be clear. Connor's the one. Yeah.
Well, he's hustling. What have you learned from that process that you've been able to apply to Grumpy Old Spurs, if anything?
That's a great question, and we always, myself included, and I always used to have a little joke with HG and others, is that whenever one of us appeared on another pod or a YouTube, it's like you're a kid and you've gone round to your mate's house and their parents are there, and you are on your very, very best behaviour. Yeah, you're on your
Mm-hmm.
very, very best behaviour. So, I've done one OSO Spurs, and we had Jim come on from OSO Spurs come on as well. Now, their shtick is optimism. Okay, their shtick is optimism, and they are genuinely very lovely people. Jim's a really nice guy, and I'm not being sarky, Jim. I'm being serious, right? And so when we had Jim come on our show, the shtick that we did with him was go, right, either you're going to make us more cheerful by the end of the show, or we will make you grumpy. And we did our customary question to guests. Well, what's the first time you went to Tottenham? What's your first game? And what's the first time Spurs made you grumpy? And we thought Jim would really struggle with that. No, straight away goes, oh, yeah, no, I've got an answer to that one. It was great. Yeah. So I think when you go on other shows, you've got to, in all seriousness, you are on their show for a start. So unless you've got the biggest ego in the world where you're going, you're so blessed to have me on, not that me appearing on anything is going to boost anyone's numbers, right? Might reduce it. You are their guest. And so you do have to, you really do have to kind of approach it as to, if you're going on someone else's pod, watch a few of their pods and see what the operating rhythm is, etc., right? So, like, a few times I've been on Holly's show, and Holly might not believe this, but I kind of watered it down and was much more of a pleasant version of myself than I am on Grumpy. Although I'm pleasant enough on Grumpy, because I'm there with other people and don't try and dominate the conversation, right? Doing a couple of things with the boy Hotspur where we've done about 2 or 3 of them, and we're just having a laugh of it. And he's got a really dry sense of humor, and I've got a pretty dry sense of humor. So we're kind of similar generation. They're kind of on the grumpy scale. They're kind of firmly next to us. They might be more grumpy than us. They're a little bit darker in their humor, which I think is fine and funny. And so we were just talking about who's the more grumpy, and you get into that operating rhythm of that chemistry again. And then sometimes you come back and you go, actually, they did this really well, or they did that really well. We should try and bring that into the show as well.
I think especially as you're trying to go for a more light-hearted, not necessarily deliberately funny one, like a comedy podcast.
No, we're not. We're not. Yeah. We may be comedic very unintentionally.
Yeah. We're a lot of things, but no one would call us that. No, I don't mean obviously to be insulting, but like, you're looking at it from more of a light-hearted approach, and for that to work, you need to have people who click. And so, you can't just kind of, you have to be careful about who you pick. You have to be careful about who you approach, about what you put in front of them, and what you might get out of them. I think, especially as a podcast host, and I think what you're saying about listening to other people's stuff speaks to that quite well. I've heard people rocking up for the first time on Last Word on Spurs, which, if I were on there, I don't think I'd barely talk, but they start picking fights, and I'm like, that's kind of what Ricky wants, but I don't think he wants it like this,
Well, if I was ever invited by the U2 of the Tottenham pod and YouTube to be on there, there's at least 2 of their regulars they sometimes have blocked me on X. So if Ricky was particularly unlucky to have a panel of 2 people who blocked me on X, me and him, could make for interesting viewing. But I think that, Connor goes on there. I mean, the great thing about Connor Leaving-omics, right, is that he knows his stuff around the finances and things like that. And he's been a really, really great addition to our show, and has made a great contribution. And the chemistry with him over the last few months, as we're all talking together and working with each other, has got better and better, because we're taking the mickey about him being a bit of a tart, going on all these different shows, and he's saying, "Oh, don't worry, I won't leave you. I'll never forget my first. I love you, Grumpy Old Spurs." Yeah. So we're getting into that groove of working together like that, and the chemistry, and I think it's in a good place now.
I think he'll stick with you. I'm a bit the same as some of the pods that hosted me before I started this show. I feel a warmth and an affection towards them for helping me find my feet with talking into a microphone about this insane football club.
Yeah, I mean, just on a slight tangent, like in terms of like being the overseas fan, and because I think you asked that question about 20 minutes ago. Sorry for rambling, because you obviously got Gibbo is sat in Worcester,
Oh yeah.
I'm here. Connor is on his like his massive estate from all the proceeds he gets from Last Word on Spurs. Leon, who's sometimes on, is on in South London, right? So the way the time works, like for 6 months of the season, I'm 11 hours ahead. So I'm like doing shows sometimes at 5:30 in the morning, right? Now I'm a grouchy person. And if you're watching a show, you'll know when the caffeine's kicked in about 20 minutes in and I get a bit more animated. Yeah. So there's that commitment of doing it at 5:30 in the morning. And we do a little, I do a little bit of prep of it, not hours and hours. And so that works there. And then the rest of the time, we just got to manage when people can do it in the UK and here, because like we're not doing this professionally. We're not earning money out of it. It's a hobby which we enjoy, but we've got to balance up loads of stuff. So we try and do a show once a week, and we feel bad if at times life gets in the way we can't do it. But that's just, it's a hobby, right? And one area that I really took advantage of is the Heung-min Son announcement that he was leaving Tottenham, right? So I'm up the road at Woolies, the supermarket, and I see on Twitter, oh, he's announced he's going. So I thought, right, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to script up a 5-minute video on an instant reaction. And for once, I've got the scoop ahead of the UK. They're all asleep. I mean, someone on Twitter moaned that it was free. Why did the club announce this at 3:00 in the morning? So I rather cheekily answered, it's called a time zone. And so I what I did is I came in, dumped the supermarket shopping, scripted up something for 5-10 minutes, and did an instant reaction. And then, like the social media genius that I was, I put into chat what Heung-min Son's name is in Korean, copied and pasted that, whacked that into the headline, and then we got 4,500 views, which I know for the big boys of the world that's their usual weekly view, but for us it was good. And I did get some abuse in Korean when I gave a balanced response to the fact that maybe Son should have left a couple of years ago. But that's when you can take advantage at that time of the time zone. It's maybe when they're on their pre-season tours in Asia, you've got more of an opportunity to instant react, and you're ahead of the UK for once. But in terms of our doing a show where we're doing Monday night, we realised that there's been a lot of instant reactions already. There's been a lot of content already. So we try not to repeat what everyone else is talking about.
Yeah, and I think especially if it's like scheduling is such a headache when you've got people in different time zones. Especially if you're not regularly talking to them. At least with you and Gibbo and Leon and Connor, you kind of know to bracket off a period of time. But I'd say that friends of the show, Tottenham home and away, Glenn and Graham, they're in is he in Perth? I think Glenn might be in Perth.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. Graham is in somewhere around, south of England, but they interview folks from all over. So they'll have people from Denver, Colorado. That's kind of their approach, is to bring in a new guest every week. So they're constantly sort of juggling time zones and when people are working, when people are awake, when they're not. But then you look at the cheese room. I mean, you've got Brazil, you've got America. I think sometimes shows up on there. They have American voices.
I'm pretty sure that we've done it. I'm pretty sure that there's been a pod with maybe 4 continents on, maybe South
recorded
America.
on 2 different days at the same time.
Yeah.
It's kind of what we're doing now.
Yeah, well, exactly. I'm pretty at least 3 continents, maybe 4, and that's pretty cool. And that's what I love about this kind of the podcast YouTube thing. And it's even if you see someone in the supermarket who's wearing a Tottenham shirt and you go up to them and go, all right, how's it going? Like, or I see a kid in the supermarket with a Tottenham shirt on and their mum's there, and I go, Mum, yeah, nice one. You're raising your kid really well. Well done. And
I did that on
that's
Wednesday
what brings it.
Yeah. At my kid's daycare, I went in, I saw a kid in the new black away shirt.
Oh, cool. Nice.
I ignored my kid.
Good.
Beelined over to him. And I was like, you're a Spurs fan? He goes, yeah. I'm like, good man. And I gave him a fist bump. And I honestly thought I was going to get put on the list. I just, but yeah, you've got to do that when you're thousands of miles away from home. You got to find your people and make that connection and sort of just celebrate both being Spurs.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's very important. It's really important.
Yeah. So looping back to Connor again.
Yes.
He's become the linchpin of this pod. He must have been really useful when you were complaining about Daniel Levy. Being grumpy about Daniel Levy. But now he's gone. What do you think we're going to be grumpy about?
Sorry. Well, I said to him, I started calling him
Yeah.
the artist formerly known as Levynomics, but he wants to keep Levynomics as his name, which fair play to him. Look, I think that it's interesting, right? Because I'm quite interested in the business side of things, right? I mean, I don't talk about a lot about what I do work wise, but let's just say my knowledge of various structures that ENIC have and the ways that private equity works and things like that. I'd say I'd know more about it than a lot of people and less about it than some people, yeah. And obviously, so myself and Connor have worked together on a few different things, looking at the numbers, how it's all set up and things like that in the past. And the great thing is Gibbo's got absolutely zero interest in that whatsoever. So when we talk on the show about it, we're explaining it to someone who's got no interest in it, and that's really cool. And I think that works really well. And obviously, we're taking a mickey at the moment by talking about the fact that we've got a new era, our new owners, the Lewis family. That unbelievable. And I have been accused. I was accused on Twitter about having me and Leon have got nothing left in life now that Daniel Levy has moved on, which is which is very amusing. But I think there's plenty of material there with our new owners. So this announcement of the 100 million on our WhatsApp chat, Gibbo, I think Gibbo wrote, "Great, that's 3 crap players we can buy for 100 million." So I think we'll cover that off next week. There's plenty to talk about, right? And I think that Levy is a very divisive figure, obviously, and ENIC's a very divisive figure. But I did some stuff with the change for Tottenham guys as much as you can. I had my picture taken on the harbour with the poster and stuff like that. But I've been Levy and ENIC out since AVB was the last straw for me. It's a long time ago, right? I mean, you talk about Fraser Campbell. I gave him one last chance after the Berbatov Campbell window. So that's still a lot of patience, right? And so there's still plenty of material there to talk about the club, the owners, and things like that. And I think that a lot of people say that everyone blamed Levy for everything and this, that, and the other. And I would just say, well, he just wasn't very good at running a football club, which kind of what he was paid to do. And we're not going to go down that road, but
Yeah.
and I think to content on YouTube and podcasts and things like that. So that the Spurs show, I think over the years started talking about it a bit more. And you can always tell when they've got guests on there who may have some kind of a commercial relationship with the club versus others who don't. And I have a little message to Mike about that, and a little joke about it. But some people want to touch it and some people don't. And like for the cheese ring, for example, we were in this ludicrous situation at one point. I think it was one of the transfer windows where I say one particular other channel was sending their people onto our channel. And we were doing a show and again, when you talk about ENIC, you're a bunch of ENIC enablers and all this, that, and the other. And I'm like, and I love it when people come on and do comments like that, because I'm like, mate, I am as much ENIC out as you. But for me, it doesn't make for very good content to have 1 hour, 2 hour, 3 hours just talking about ENIC and Levy. Even I find that boring. As hard as that is to believe for some people.
Hey, there are plenty of channels out there that are strigging it out for 3 or 4 hours.
No, I know that, and I've like because of the
More
time
power
zone
to them.
difference. Yeah, and it's less of it now, but because of the time zone difference, I'm like, I just click on it and go, oh, talking about that again, and I go off and do something, and 3 hours later, they're still there. It's like it's 2 in the morning.
gone.
Get to bed.
Yeah, I do wonder. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think there's somebody who's sitting there. I hope there isn't somebody sitting there waiting in the waiting room to go in and listen for the 3 hours straight. I'm assuming that people are just kind of dipping in and out, and what they're doing is just trying to catch a sort of big net of people at various times. You come in for 15, 20 minutes and then you leave.
Yeah.
Somebody who's sitting there for 4 hours. It would be like a really perverse version of that scene in Clockwork Orange where he's strapped down with his eyes open and he's getting brainwashed. I dare not think about what would happen to a person after sort of. Well, actually, I did it. I guess with with the 8 hours of We Are Tottenham TV. It's just too much content to imbibe from one person at one time. It's I don't think it's healthy. I think you need a bit of variety when you listen to podcasts and voices and whatnot.
Yeah. So another interesting thing is that, and I've spoken to someone about this. Now there is a massive lack of females doing this, right?
You can count on one hand, I think, the
Yeah.
number of
Yeah. And it's something I've thought about a lot from the point of view. And I was talking to someone about this, and she said to me that the Tottenham, and I think this is probably the same for every other club or whatever, is that the podcast and the YouTube is the equivalent of the bloke in the house going pottering around in the shed and getting off. Like, so Gibbo's always says that his missus goes, go and do your YouTube instant reaction, get it out your system, and then you can come back to the bosom of the family and we've got you back again, right? And it's very therapeutic to vent. Like after the last Bodo Glimt game, the three of us was there and it was all a bit crap and we're all a bit grumpy, but it's therapeutic to do it. But I come back to the point where, you know, the male goes off to the shed, vents, potters around, and then comes back into the house. And it might be the equivalent of that, but there's a real lack of female representation. And what do you think about that? I mean, you're the one who's kind of got this pod that's looking at everything.
I think that, you know, sports fandom generally is male dominated, so of course you're going to get
yes
a
and
high
no.
percentage.
I'm not sure I'd agree, but go on.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I think added on to that, it's really important that we do have the environment in which women feel like they can join into the spaces and they're invited. But there's a bit of a problem in like academic circles where you get the same sort of female professors or whoever. They're asked to do everything because they're the representation. So that's kind of something we have to be careful about. There are some good, excellent, you know, podcasters out there. I think of, you know, Rosa on Hometown Glory. I think of Carolyn on Tottenham Depot. You've got the, you know, Dame Julie Welch on Nice One Cyril. There are, you know, a few.
Well, she's Dame Julie is a legend, right?
Yes.
And she's not a dame. She should be a dame, right?
I think she's a dame.
She's not.
She's
not. She was on the Spurs show. She made it clear that she's actually not a dame. And then I can't remember if Michael Theo was hosting, said, "No, we're still calling you Dame."
All right.
And then and you mentioned Holly as well. So yeah, she's doing a sterling job as well.
And I'm probably missing a few, and I apologize for that. But
yeah,
there's some great people that are doing stuff. What I'd love to hear is a sort of a women's only panel covering the men's team, because they're just as passionate as us, if not more knowledgeable than some of the people I've heard.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I don't know how you foster that environment without it just being, you know, you make friends with women and invite them onto your podcast, you know?
Yeah, I mean, it's. I mean, I look, you know, it's easy for me to say that. I mean, I don't think that we're not a very alpha podcast. We're not. What we do is, I wouldn't call it very. We're just grumpy blokes, just moaning and having a laugh, taking a piss at the end. I don't think we're that exclusionary or anything like that. But you know, we're at the moment we're only doing it 1 hour a week, and that's about it. You know, we're trying to get a bit more content on the channel, which we do from time to time. It just depends on who's available, and if there's the opportunity to do that, it'd be great. But that is just a general observation for me. And then the other question I have for you is that, you know, you've started off this quite recent venture. What prompted you to do a podcast about Tottenham podcasts?
Yeah, good question. It started off as a shit post on Bluesky.
Right.
I can't remember what happened. You know, because, you know, people have been joking about there being too many Tottenham pods for a while. It's just kind of an in-joke. You hear a Flav say it on the Fighting Cock. It's been just a general thing. Like,
and Connor's been on all of them, I hope.
Yeah, I don't know how he does it. All 115 of them.
A week.
Well, 114 because he hasn't been on Poddenham.
Well, you got to get him on.
Yeah. I'll wait until he's ticked all of them off.
Yeah.
So I put a joke post out that was something like, what we need is a podcast about Spurs podcasts so we don't have to listen to all the podcasts. And it kicked off, and actually the people who were commenting underneath, several of them, including Jack from Rule the Roost, were like, I would listen to this. Yeah. And you know, sometimes you step away from something, you post something online, and usually it's like, I just fart something out into the ether and hope that the smell dissipates quickly. But this one kind of hung around, and I was like, I could do that. I think I could do that. And I can't remember what my first episode was about. I think the first one was just like a general, like, nose to tail 20-minute thing, and then I moved on to reviewing the Sol Campbell Stick to Football or whatever it's called, Sky Sports interview.
I did not watch that.
Yeah, well,
I
that's what I found
refuse.
interesting. I was like, how's he talking? And then I think I did one change for Tottenham. It just kind of kept going, and people were like,
Yeah.
I really like this. This is really good.
Okay.
And what I wanted to do was make sure that I wasn't taking listeners away from anybody. I mean, not that I could.
Why
But
would you be worried? Why would you be worried about that?
well, because I think that there's a relationship between myself and this podcast and those other podcasts where it's kind of I need to keep an unspoken respect between what I do here and what you guys all do. Because
It
what I don't
sounds
want to
like
be
a
doing is
mafia code of a murder going on here.
but you've put me on the spot here on my own show, and I'm not appreciating it.
Sorry about that. I've broken that rule I talked about. I'm your guest.
Exactly.
Yeah,
That's
sorry
fine.
about that.
What I saw as a central point was like, I don't need to be positive, but I'd like to be positive because there are people who listen to these shows.
Mm-hmm.
There's something of value in all of them, and I'd rather find that than just the criticism. And I'd rather not be. A lot of people were looking for me to dunk on other shows, like, "Oh, I want you to point out and make fun about them." And I just wanted to comment, like, that's incredibly difficult to be funny on a podcast. So going into having that as one of your aims for your pod is quite. I have a lot of respect for it because it's difficult to be funny regularly into a microphone that potentially thousands of people are going to listen to. I wasn't going to do that. That's not me. I'm more of an analytical person.
Yeah.
I felt like that. I can do that. I can sort of catalog stuff and think about trends and identify things to talk about later and dig deep. I can do that, but I can't sit there and be funny or irreverent or like a reaction YouTuber.
Mm-hmm.
Like I've got an idea for an April 1st joke next year to be that for one episode.
As long as it's not Sol Campbell involved, then that'll be fine.
It was an interesting interview. I wish I hadn't watched it, but I'm glad I did.
And then, obviously we were introduced with Gareth, and he's kicked off his nostalgia.
Love it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a fair element of what the Spurs show do is nostalgia, and like when I had Crooks and Archibald on, when they had the interview with Crooks and Archibald, I nearly cried 3 times listening to it because I loved them and loved them still so much. We do a little bit of nostalgia as well. I mean, we've got Gareth on this week on Monday night UK time. We're bringing him on to do part 2 on the Hot Shot Tottenham. Because unfortunately Gibbo was away for part 1, and I really wanted him involved in doing it. And we could do it in the international week, so we do a fair bit of that. And in Grumpy Old Spurs style, in an international break, we did the worst Spurs team of all time. So each of us had to pick out. Yeah, the rule was you had to kind of be alive for their awfulness, and then each of us picked a team. And the other two, really, Leon and Gibbo, really went for awful players. I went for players that annoyed me, and some other people liked them. So that's just the contrarian of me. So we did that as well. So we do a bit of nostalgia as well as what's going on.
Yeah, there's a few pods out there. I would say that like 75% of Spurs pods. That's just me picking a number out of thin air. But they all have some element of nostalgia because you're always reflecting upon past experiences. You're always talking about the players that influenced you. That's in everything, but there are more. Especially, we talked about the Spurs show. It's hard to ignore their interviews, the access to guests.
Yeah.
But I think what Gareth is doing that's interesting is he's locking it into a sort of 5-year period, and he's giving people kind of a bunch of resources that you can listen to pretty easily at any time, whatever you're doing on the bus or on the beach or, can't sleep. And he is, such a good Spurs historian. That he is such a good interviewer for these people. Like his interview with Darren Anderson, like he knows his oats, he's done his research, he was there. And I think that's what makes it exciting that we have a podcast that is just saying, I am a nostalgia podcast. And I think we need a little bit more of that. That's kind of my lesson that I've learned in 6 months of doing this is you can't just go out and I guess you can, but I wouldn't advocate for somebody going out and saying, well, me and my mates are the funniest people ever. We've got the best opinions about Spurs. So if we just record ourselves on our phones and put it together, it's going to be a hit. Like, no, I think what we're seeing is people are recognizing that you've got to stand out a little bit Whether that's
Yeah.
because you're grumpy, whether that's because you're nostalgia, whether that's because you talk about other people's products, like I do.
Here comes more blokes talking about Tottenham.
Yeah, exactly.
What a difference that's going to make. Absolutely.
Yep. So you end your episodes with reasons to be cheerful.
Yeah,
I'll
and
edit that. That'll be
and
fine.
cheerful. No, you're good. And
Yeah.
cheerful.
You're
I
cheerful and
might do
cheerful.
that. We all sit on a chair. We're happy.
You're
Yeah.
right. What's your reasons to be cheerful as a Spurs podcaster and as a Spurs fan? What
At the
keeps you coming
moment,
back to doing this? It could be.
Well,
Up to
look,
you.
we like last season we put in a heavy shift of, was it 22 defeats? We were there every week. I mean, you know, on the one hand, it's all right to be grumpy and this, that, and the other, but when it is awful week on week, and the fun we had of it last year is that, you know, obviously I hold an Aussie passport and a British passport, and Leon and Gibbo and Connor, I was calling them the Ange Undertakers. They wanted to get the body to the mortuary and finish him off. And I was saying, you lot are anti-Australian. It's a disgrace. And then you even had the boy Hotspur appearing as a talking head on Australian TV. This woman sits next to me at work. Did you see that thing about Ange? I said, do you know the bloke with the big black glasses? I'm doing a pod with him tonight. Oh, he's rude and this, that, and the other. So I was playing on I'm at the forefront of Australia versus England, right? So, but it was quite hard work. But reasons to be cheerful at the moment. We called it in March, Thomas Frank. I like Thomas Frank, right? We're so reactionary as fans. Oh, the last manager, he didn't do any tactics. He never changed anything. He's got no idea. And this one's they've all got 5,000 iPads between them. But I liked him. I thought he did a great job on no budget at Brentford. To do what he did was amazing and improved players. So I'm loving Frank. I think that's great. I do. We had a bit of an argument, or not, with Gibbo, where he thought Xavi Simon's a bit overhyped, and me and Connor were like, "What?" I'm liking Xavi Simon so far. I like Kudos so far, with the added benefit it's really annoyed West Ham and Karen Brady. Brilliant. I'm loving the fact that touch wood and its famous last words, Van de Ven and Romero seem to be playing their longest streak ever. Now I've done it. I apologise. So there's plenty to be cheerful about. And I think with our brand new owners, the Von Trapp children, if they will be judged not so much the January window, to quote Steve Hitchin, but the summer windows. If they bring in some oven-ready players who are going to improve that first 11 and get 3 players in and pay them 250 quid a week, that's when your reasons to be cheerful. But so far, look, home's going to be a struggle for us. Anyone in the low block, it's going to be a struggle because we're lacking creativity. That's obvious. But I like what he's doing. There's the honeymoon period. We're fully in a Frank honeymoon period and we're enjoying it. So those are your reasons to be cheerful. What are your reasons to be cheerful?
Well, we just won a European trophy. I think that goes a long way, if I'm honest.
Beautiful.
I'm not saying that the season should be a write-off, but I was on the Rule the Roost saying, give it some time. Let ourselves breathe and just enjoy being European champions without the added pressure of needing to immediately. We're all worried about whether or not this is going to continue or if we're going to get another one anytime soon. But right now, we do have it and enjoy that. We got some good young players like Beraval. I think he's a useful, tidy player. And I'm enjoying the debate about some of the stuff that's happening. I think it's a good reason to think about Spurs more critically now, rather than just saying, well, we're bad because of, this is what some people do. We're bad because of Ange. We're bad because of the injuries. I think we can look now and spend a bit more time thinking about us more critically. Yes. And I think that's enjoyable. That's an enjoyable thing to do. Those would be mine.
Plenty.
So Sorry,
go on.
No, I can't remember what I was going to say.
Well, I mean, if we're going to wrap this up, we probably, in terms of where our content is available, is that maybe?
Yeah, where can people find you in your pod?
No worries. My mind. No, So we're on the Lads It's Tottenham YouTube channel. Our show at the moment is going out 8:30 p.m. on Monday nights. We try and do a weekly Grumpy Old Spurs show, and we're on 8:30 Monday nights, and then you can find us there. We haven't yet worked out how to do an audio version and stick it on Spotify or Apple. Maybe you might. I can ask you about that, Iain, another time, as this is an audio one. And that's what we're doing at the moment. We do other stuff as well. Sometimes there's a Friday night show with the other guys. when they can do it, and then we're trying to, if we can, get more content up. But thank you very much for having me on, and I would like to recognise the contributions of Gibbo, Leon, and last word on Spurs, Connor, to the thing, because it's really, despite what my mother said, it's not all about me.
Very well said. Thanks for coming on.
Pleasure.
And thanks to everybody else for listening. You can follow the pod on @Poddenham Podspur on Bluesky. That's close enough to what I should be saying. Yeah, you can find us on all your podcast players. Drop a like. Go check out Grumpy Old Spurs lads at Tottenham, and keep making and listening to Spurs podcasts.